The message from Vega. The emergency tone shattered the stillness of Admiral James Wilson's quarters at precisely 0347 Earth Standard Time. He bolted upright in bed, years of military conditioning snapping into place before his brain could fully register the urgency. His eyes locked onto the priority code flashing on the comm unit beside his bunk. Priority black. Wilson's stomach sank. There was only one reason such a designation would appear: extinction-level event. "Wilson here," he answered, voice steady despite the early hour. "Sir," came a voice from Central Command. "We've received a transmission from Outpost Vega. Priority black. It's bad, sir. Real bad. Send it to my terminal, now." The screen in Wilson's quarters blinked to life, flickering with static for a moment before stabilizing. A man appeared on screen, mid-40s, blood pouring down the side of his face. The background behind him was chaos, smoke, screaming gunfire. "This is Director Thomas Grant of Outpost Vega." The man gasped, panting heavily. "They came without warning our defenses. Overrun in minutes. This isn't a raid. They're not here to conquer. They're here to kill. To harvest." The camera jolted violently. Screams tore through the transmission. Grant glanced over his shoulder, his face pale with terror. "I'm sending sensor data. Earth must know. God help us all." The screen split. One side showed Grant's terrified face. The other displayed thermal and motion tracking data from Vega. Wilson's blood ran cold. The alien life forms moved with impossible speed, blurs on the sensors tearing through marine units like paper targets. Footage jumped to a shaky security feed. Wilson leaned forward. Something vaguely humanoid but larger, faster, predatory moved into view, ripping through an armored squad in a matter of seconds. Blood sprayed across the lens before the feed cut to black. Back on screen, Grant's eyes widened as a massive shadow loomed behind him. Then static. Wilson sat in stunned silence for several seconds. Then he stood, fingers dancing across the console. "Emergency Protocol Alpha 0. Wake them all. I want every senior defense official in Crisis Command within 15 minutes." By the time the sun rose over Geneva, the United Earth Crisis Command Center was filled with the world's most powerful military and political leaders. The air was electric with dread. "The footage is genuine," said General Lisa Hayes, head of Earth Defense's Advanced Threat Division. "This isn't like the skirmishes on the frontier. These things, whatever they are, aren't playing by the rules." "How many colonists were stationed on Vega?" someone asked. Wilson didn't flinch. 20,000. They're all presumed dead, or worse. Defense Secretary Marcus Donovan leaned forward, his voice low. "What are our options?" General Hayes shook her head. "Conventional forces would be slaughtered. You saw the footage." The room fell silent. Then Wilson said it. The one thing no one wanted to hear. "We need to activate Project Nemesis." The backlash was immediate. "You can't be serious," Donovan barked. "Those people were locked away for a reason. They're psychopaths, monsters." "No," Wilson said calmly. "They're soldiers, the most lethal warriors humanity ever created. Yes, they were too dangerous for peacetime, but we're not in peacetime anymore." "They were supposed to be forgotten," Hayes whispered. "Well," Wilson replied, turning toward the exit, "the universe just reminded us why they were made in the first place." Within the hour, Wilson's shuttle was en route to the Arctic. Beneath 2 miles of ice hidden from all satellites and scrubbed from every record lay the vault. As the shuttle descended, Wilson's thoughts returned to Grant's final words. To the scream, the shadow, the hopelessness in the man's voice. The galaxy had finally sent something that made Earth afraid. Now, Earth was going to send something back. And this time the monsters would be ours. Waking the monsters. The vault was colder than death. Admiral Wilson stood in the decontamination chamber as a low-frequency hum pulsed through the air, scanning him for contaminants. He didn't flinch as supercooled air blasted his uniform. His eyes were locked on the steel bulkhead ahead, the door marked simply with a single chilling designation. N1. 15 years, said Director Mason, stepping beside him. A thin man with haunted eyes and a voice like static. Since we put him under. Wilson said nothing, his gloved fingers curled slightly. Last one we sealed was Reed. The others had already been locked down for safety. Safety, Wilson echoed. Now we need survival. The steel door groaned as it slid open. Inside, sterile white clinical silence, and in the center of it all, a vertical stasis pod. Floating in the chamber, suspended like a weapon held in reserve, was Commander Alex Reed. He looked barely human. Thick muscle wrapped a frame reinforced with carbon fiber weave. Cybernetic nodes protruded from his arms and spine. His body told a story of war scars layered over scars, memories etched in flesh. His eyes were closed, but even in sleep, he looked like he might kill the world if it gave him a reason. Mason nodded toward the technicians. Begin revival sequence. Fluid hissed and drained from the pod. Lights flashed. Reed's eyes snapped open, pale blue and terrifyingly alert. No confusion, no adjustment, just immediate combat-ready awareness. The pod opened with a pneumatic sigh, and Reed stepped forward, bare feet slapping the cold steel floor. His body glistened with leftover cryofluid. He looked at Wilson, studied him for 3 seconds, and said, "Admiral, must be serious if you're waking me. Humanity's facing extinction." Reed took the towel offered by a nervous technician who immediately backed away when Reed met his gaze. "They're afraid of me," Reed said dryly, wrapping the towel around his waist. "They should be." As Reed dressed in a pressure-sealed jumpsuit, Mason led Wilson to the adjacent chamber N2. This one, Mason said, tapping the control panel, was always the most physically durable. The chamber lit up, revealing a massive figure suspended in blue fluid. The man inside looked like he was carved from metal. In fact, parts of him where his skin had been fused with adaptive combat armor, a reactive layer that shimmered like mercury. Marcus Blackwood, integrated epidermal plating, can survive in vacuum tank direct energy fire. He feels everything though. Hypersensitive nerve endings. The pain would drive anyone else insane. How does he manage it? Focused violence. N3. Diana Frost, neural acceleration implants. She experiences time at roughly 12x human perception. Reaction time in milliseconds. Wilson frowned, drawback. Her consciousness doesn't slow down. A minute feels like an hour. She hasn't felt normal time in years. Can't turn it off. Hell of a curse. She calls it a gift. N4. The figure in this pod was less imposing until you noticed the arms like hydraulic pistons. Ryan Cole, enhanced muscular systems, extreme strength, can tear through steel bulkheads with his bare hands. Price, constant caloric demand. If he doesn't eat protein every 3 hours, his body starts consuming itself. Wilson raised an eyebrow. Self-cannibalizing Superman, essentially. N5. This one was different. Slim, quiet, deadly. Ava Rise, weaponized nervous system. Her body is laced with embedded armaments, plasma ports, smart targeting projectiles, kinetic disruptors. She's a walking weapons platform. Wilson stared at the data screen. It says she's in chronic pain. Mason nodded. Phantom pain from the implants. Non-stop. No cure. Only release is when she's in battle. Of course it is. 30 minutes later, the 5 were awake, armed, silent. In the briefing chamber, they didn't speak. No smiles, no greetings. Just cold calculating glances, weapons recognizing other weapons. Reed stood at the head of the room. "They call themselves the Harvest," he said. "They're not here to conquer. They're here to process us, turn us into resources." He played the Vega footage again. Screams, blood, the blur of the alien attackers, the silence after Director Grant's death. They're fast, strong, coordinated, Reed assessed, but they bleed, and if it bleeds, he looked at the others. It can die. What's the mission? Frost asked, her voice just a little too fast, like the world couldn't keep up. Hunt, kill, exterminate. The ground shook slightly as the military vessel Retribution came online, preparing for launch. Built in secret, powered by anger, crewed by fear. Wilson stood on the launch deck and watched the Nemesis team board. These weren't just enhanced humans. They were something else. Something Earth had created, then tried to bury. And now, they were humanity's last hope. As the ship roared into the sky, punching through atmosphere and clouds, Wilson whispered under his breath, "God help the enemy," because Earth was done playing nice. The first hunt. The Retribution was a warship without luxury, without softness. Every corridor, every panel screamed purpose. It wasn't built for comfort. It was built to kill. Commander Reed stood at the observation window, hands clasped behind his back. Stars burned silently in the void beyond, uncaring. Behind him, bridge crew moved with quiet urgency, always stealing glances at the 6-foot predator in human skin, now commanding their mission. Captain Laura Hill, a hardened officer with 3 combat deployments under her belt, approached with measured steps. She deliberately let her boots clack on the metal floor, announce herself. "Commander," she said, her voice even, "we'll be passing Arcturus Station in 4 hours. It's gone dark." Reed didn't turn. "You want to stop and check? It's a colony, 5,000 people, families. We can't afford detours." She stepped forward. "These are human lives." "Exactly," Reed replied coldly, "which is why every second matters." Then a pause. "Send a fighter wing to recon, no landings, visual confirmation only." Hill stared at him for a moment, then gave a short nod and turned away. It was a compromise, barely. In the mess hall, the Nemesis team sat alone. No one from the regular crew dared eat near them. Fear leaked from every table like a gas no one could name. Frost sat with inhuman stillness, her movements too efficient, too fast, like watching a time-lapse in real life. Blackwood devoured a mountain of protein, his metallic skin glinting under the LED lights. Ava Rise said nothing, simply tuning her arm-mounted plasma ports with surgical focus. Cole cracked a bone in his neck with a sound that made a nearby ensign jump. "They're scared of us," Cole muttered, chewing. "They should be," Frost replied, words snapping like electric pulses. Reed entered without fanfare. Conversation halted. Even among his own team, his presence hit like pressure in a storm front. "We stop at Arcturus," he announced. "Recon only." Blackwood looked up. "You think we'll find survivors?" Reed didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 hours later, the recon drones returned. The footage played across the Retribution's main screen. Arcturus Station had been gutted. The station's hull was torn open like a can, its insides scattered into the vacuum. Bodies floated like meat in zero-G. Blood drifted in slow crimson clouds. Some corpses had no visible injuries, just blank frozen expressions, like their minds had been turned off. Same attack pattern, same brutality, same monsters. "They're moving faster than expected," Reed said, arms folded. "This station was hit 3 days ago." His jaw tightened. "They're heading toward the inner colonies." Suddenly, a comms officer shouted from her terminal, "Distress signal coming in Proxima Colony. Under attack right now." Captain Hill paled. 50,000 civilians. 2 days out, Reed muttered, calculating. "Then what the hell are we waiting for?" Hill snapped. "We've also just picked up a Harvest Scout ship," said the sensor chief. "Leaving Proxima airspace. Alone. Vulnerable." Hill's voice turned icy. "Intercepting that ship means abandoning the Proxima mission." Reed stared at the feed. The alien ship was sleek, insectile, a black dart in space. "If we catch that scout," he said, "we might learn how to kill them better." Hill stepped forward. "Commander, there are people dying down there, and there will be billions more if we don't figure out how to stop this at the source." Reed turned to the helm. "Plot an intercept course, full burn." The bridge went silent. Not with agreement, with fear. They were starting to understand. The Nemesis team didn't think in terms of lives, they thought in terms of math. The Retribution caught the Harvest scout ship 2 hours later. It tried to flee zigzagging like a serpent on methamphetamine, but the human warship had surprise speed and fury. "EMP pulse ready," barked the weapons officer. "Fire," Reed said. A wave of blue-white energy burst from the ship's core, enveloping the alien craft. The insectile ship shuddered, lights flickered, propulsion failed. It drifted dead in the water. "Saddle up," Reed said, already striding toward the armory. The Nemesis team didn't wear full armor. They didn't need to. Blackwood slipped into a thin pressure suit over his armored skin. Frost wore a bodysuit designed to stretch with time-bending reflexes. Rise loaded her embedded launchers with gleaming canisters. Cole grabbed nothing but reinforced gauntlets and a few backup protein injectors. Reed loaded a sidearm, a custom pistol firing hyperfragmentation rounds. "Standard breach formation," he said. "Frost takes point. Blackwood and Cole support. Rise on tactical. I lead." Captain Hill met them at the shuttle bay door. Her face was pale but determined. "You have no idea what's in that ship." Reed stared at her, utterly calm. "That's why we're going in." The shuttle slammed into the side of the alien ship. Cutting torches burned through alien hull. Frost was already moving before the breach had fully formed, her motion a blur. "3 contacts left, corridor," she whispered through comms. Reed motioned. "Go." They entered. The interior was wrong. Organic walls, breathing corridors, a faint copper stench in the air. The first alien dropped from the ceiling. 7 feet tall, 4 upper limbs, segmented exoskeleton, eyes like glass. Frost moved faster. Her knife found the gap at its collar. The creature spasmed, screeched, and died before it hit the floor. Another fired a crystalline weapon, glowing shards hurtled through the air. One grazed Blackwood's shoulder, glancing off harmlessly. He didn't flinch. He charged, barreling into the second alien and crushing its thorax with a sickening crunch. The third reached for Cole. "Big mistake." Cole grinned. "Gotcha." His arms flexed. The alien lifted him, but he reversed the grip, twisted, and snapped its spine like paper. "3 down," Rise said. "More deeper in." Reed's voice crackled. "Then we push." They advanced through the ship, room by room, corridor by corridor. This wasn't combat. This was slaughter. The aliens were strong, fast, terrifying. But the Nemesis team, they were worse. In what looked like a command room, they found something new. An alien with larger eyes, more intricate markings, and more armor. Officer Rise guessed. "Take it alive," Reed ordered. Cole obeyed just barely. He pinned the thing with one elbow and stared as it hissed and clicked. Then shockingly it spoke. Broken English, croaking, primitive. "We are the Harvest." Reed stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "You're harvesting our people." "Resource," the alien croaked. "You perfect vessel." The room went silent. Then Reed said, "Secure it, and get everything off this console navigation biology fleet structure. All of it." As Rise pulled data, Reed stared at the creature, face like stone. "You picked the wrong species." Harvest at Proxima. The Retribution changed course the moment the data was secured. Proxima colony population 50,000 was under siege. And they were already late. From orbit, the surface looked deceptively calm. But long-range scans told the real story. Entire districts were blacked out. Communication arrays, silenced atmospheric particulates, thick with burnt carbon, a war zone. "We're detecting an alien ship leaving the colony's airspace," reported the sensor officer. "Similar signature to the scout we intercepted, smaller, likely another recon vessel." "We intercepting?" Hill asked sharply. Reed shook his head. Not this time, we go to Proxima. Now. No one argued. Not anymore. The Retribution entered the upper atmosphere in stealth mode. Captain Hill stood on the bridge eyes scanning tactical overlays. Too many heat signatures. Can't distinguish civilians from harvest units. Then we go in blind, Reed replied. We split. He turned to the Nemesis team. Blackwood, Cole, Rise, you created a diversion. Hit them hard. Draw them out of the population zones. Frost raised an eyebrow. And us, we find the survivors. Hill stepped forward. You're not seriously deploying in this density. You'll be outnumbered 100 to 1. Reed's voice was iron. They made the mistake of underestimating us last time. Let's return the favor. The shuttle sliced through the skies of Proxima and dropped them near a collapsed industrial sector on the colony's outskirts. From above, the city looked intact. From the ground, it was a tomb. Buildings stood like charred bones. Smoke curled through cracked streets. The faint hum of harvest drones echoed like insect wings. We're in it, Frost muttered, eyes flickering as her brain processed the environment at hyperspeed. Reed checked his HUD. 2 clicks to the colony's main data center. If anyone survived, they'll be holed up there. He signaled. They moved. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, chaos erupted. Blackwood was the first into the enemy's path, ripping through drones with explosive power. His skin shimmered as plasma rounds deflected harmlessly, but every impact still sent waves of pain through his nerve. He didn't care. Pain was his constant companion. Cole slammed a wrecked vehicle into a squad of harvest infantry, sending alien bodies flying. His gauntlets sparked with kinetic energy as he plowed through another group. Rise, quiet and clinical, took position on a rooftop, her forearms unfolding into sleek plasma cannons. Target acquisition 17, all of them downed in less than 6 seconds. They were loud, flashy, exactly as planned. Reed and Frost arrived at the Proxima data center 10 minutes later. It had been partially scorched, one side collapsed, but its reinforced bunker held. Reed activated his comms. This is Commander Alex Reed of the Earth Defense Force. We're here to extract survivors. Silence. Then a crackling voice. This is Commander Taylor, Proxima Security. Your Nemesis. We are. A pause. Then the doors hissed open. A woman stepped out, gaunt uniform torn but still standing. Behind her, nearly 200 civilians waited in the bunker. Scientists, engineers, medics, and frightened children. Makeshift beds lined the walls. The wounded were being tended by a man in a stained lab coat. This is Dr. Morgan Wells, Taylor said. Chief xenobiologist. He's the reason we're still alive. Wells walked up to Reed, scanning him. You're enhanced, he noted. Project Nemesis. I heard they sealed you away. They did. Now we're unsealed. Wells didn't flinch. Good. We need monsters to fight these monsters. As Frost began organizing evac prep, Reed pulled Wells aside. What do you know? Wells pulled out a data pad. I've been studying their biology. I've dissected several corpses. They have neural cluster nodes at the base of the neck. Hit that point, instant shutdown. Reed nodded. Useful. There's more. They coordinate through pheromonal signals like an insect hive. Disrupt those, they lose cohesion. You made a disruptor. Wells looked away. A prototype, unstable, untested. Does it work? I don't know. I haven't had time or volunteers. Reed's jaw tightened. You've got 5 minutes. Back on the battlefield, the situation turned. The aliens weren't retreating, they were adapting. Blackwood crouched behind a collapsed support beam, breathing hard. Blood streamed down one side of his face where a plasma bolt had finally penetrated. Cole was down to hand-to-hand combat, no time to recharge. Rise had gone silent, her position overrun. Reed came Frost's voice through the comms. They're outnumbered, at least 50 to 1. They won't hold. Wells, Reed said urgently. How fast can you finish your compound? I have a small batch, enough to cover maybe 50 meters. Perfect. He turned to Taylor. "Get your people to the landing zone, now." She didn't ask questions. As evac began, Reed stood by Wells in the lab zone. The scientist handed him a vial of swirling green-blue mist. "Inhale delivery or aerosol," he said. "Only works once. Limited radius." Reed loaded it into a dispersal grenade. "That's all we need." Through his tactical link, he received updates from the team. Cole was surrounded. Blackwood's vitals were spiking. Rise was offline. Reed's eyes hardened. It was time to buy them a chance. He arrived at Sector 7, Ground Zero 10 minutes later. Alien units swarmed across the plaza like a tide of black metal and chitin. Blackwood lay slumped against a wall, armor cracked. Cole stood over him, fending off enemies with bloodied fists. Then something surged from the smoke. Rise. Her weapon systems were damaged, armor torn, but she moved with grim purpose. Twin energy ports extended from her shoulders and unleashed hell. Then she collapsed. "Deploying disruptor," Reed growled, hurling the grenade into the air. Hiss! A cloud of glowing mist expanded outward. The effect was instant. Aliens staggered, clicking and hissing in panic. Their coordination faltered. Formations broke. Now Reed shouted, "Hit them!" Blackwood pushed off the wall, roaring. Cole let loose a furious charge. And Reed, barely conscious, fired one final blast, taking out an entire flank. They didn't win. They survived. And that was enough. Back at the landing zone, the evac shuttle was nearly full. Frost stood by the ramp watching civilians pour in. She turned as Reed appeared, bloodied and carrying Raz over his shoulder. Casualties: 5 civilians. No children. All evac capable. What about us? Reed's eyes met hers. Everyone gets out, one way or another. The shuttle lifted off, leaving behind a burning skyline. But this time they had won something. Data, weaknesses, and a reason to keep fighting. The fall of Vega. From orbit, Vega looked untouched, cloud patterns flowing peacefully across its surface, sunlight glittering along its oceans. But Admiral James Wilson knew better. The signals told the truth. No coordinated human activity, the sensor chief said. We detect only fragmented life signs. Approximately 200 and over 5,000 alien signatures concentrated in urban zones. Captain Hill crossed her arms. Why leave survivors? Processing, Reed said from behind her. Everyone turned. They're not done yet. It takes time to convert that many people into resources. They're still harvesting. The word dropped like a bomb in the silence. We go in, Reed continued. Same configuration. Frost and I find survivors. Blackwood, Cole, and Rise draw enemy attention. This time, no restrictions. Rise cracked her knuckles. Maximum damage. Maximum damage. The Retribution shuttle dove into Vega's atmosphere in silence. They landed near a cargo yard on the edge of the capital. The buildings were eerily intact. No fire, no explosions. But the streets were silent. Too silent. Signs of struggle. Frost observed eyes flicking across scuff marks, blood smears, and overturned carts. But not a battle. A roundup. Cattle drive, Reed muttered. They moved fast. Within minutes, Reed and Frost reached the old colony data center, a fortified structure that had once managed all civil systems. The exterior was scorched from weapons fire, but still stood. Reed activated the comm. This is Commander Reed, Earth Defense Force. We're here to evacuate survivors. A long pause. Then a voice crackled back. Commander Taylor, you again. Guess you just can't stay away. The reinforced doors opened a sliver. Taylor stepped out, armed, but her face softened when she saw them. We've got 183 alive in here, she said. Mostly scientists, some kids, and one guy keeping us all breathing. Inside the place was a tomb of exhaustion and survival. People sat against walls, eyes hollow, clutching each other. In one corner, a man moved from patient to patient, adjusting IV lines made from salvaged tubing. Dr. Morgan Wells Taylor introduced. Our xenobiologist. He's been studying the harvest since they landed. Reed approached. You survived 11 days here. Wells didn't look up. Barely, and not for much longer. As Frost began evacuation prep, Reed pulled Wells aside. You said you studied them. I did more than that, Wells replied, handing him a data pad. Tissue samples, bioscans, neural dissection. They're biologically advanced but not invincible. Tell me, their exoskeletons are incredibly dense but underneath soft tissue clustered around nerve junctions. The weakest point is here, he pointed to a base neck node. A precise hit drops them instantly. Reed nodded in coordination. They don't use radio or sound for commands. They use pheromones, airborne chemicals. Disrupt those, they collapse. Have you made a disruptor? Wells reached into his bag and produced a metal cylinder. Unstable, unproven, but it's all I have. Reed took it. Then let's test it. Meanwhile, across the city, hell erupted. Blackwood charged through the industrial zone, his metallic fists pulverizing alien drones. Every strike triggered pain through his hypersensitive skin, but pain was how he stayed sharp. Cole hurled a fuel drum through a squad of Harvest enforcers, then followed it with a plasma charge. The explosion lit the sky. Rise hovered above them on grav boosters, twin plasma cannons sweeping the street like twin sons of death. But the enemy didn't break. They adapted. Wave after wave surged forward, no fear, no hesitation. Commander Rise reported, we're facing a resistance well beyond projected models. At least 4 times our estimate. They're focusing everything here, Blackwood growled. Stalling us. Reed's eyes narrowed. They know we're pulling people out. Back at the data center, civilians rushed toward the landing zone as the shuttle hovered on standby. Frost coordinated movement like a machine, her hyper-accelerated mind processing threats before they appeared. Inside, Reed stood before a holomap with Wells and Taylor. There's a Harvest central node, Wells explained, pointing to a pulsating structure deep within the alien zone. We believe it's coordinating the processing and storage of harvested biomass. Meaning, they're not just killing people, they're converting them. Slowly, feeding biological materials into their ship's systems. Reed stared at the blinking icon. How many? Wells hesitated. Thousands, possibly more. Reed's jaw clenched. Can they be saved? No. A beat of silence. Then we blow it to hell. The mission was suicide, and they knew it, but it had to be done. Wells produced several more vials of the disruptor compound. I converted them into aerosol grenades. Toss and pray. The Nemesis team regrouped outside the landing zone. Frost and I will hit the node, Reed said. The rest of you cause as much destruction as you can. Buy us time. Rules of engagement, Cole asked, voice low. No limits. Rise grinned. They launched in a stealth pod barely large enough for 5 people. The target, the Harvest mothership, a massive organic monstrosity hovering above the city like a cancer in the sky. As the pod latched onto its hull, the true scale became clear. The structure pulsed alive with fluid and movement like a breathing organism. This isn't a ship, Frost whispered. It's a womb. Reed slammed the hatch. Let's sterilize it. They entered through a maintenance junction, slicing through the membrane-like wall. Inside, pulsating veins, bioluminescent lighting the scent of rotten chemicals. The ship was alive. Movement ahead. Deploying disruptor, Reed said, tossing a grenade. A hiss. The alien stumbled, confused, erratic. Hit them, he barked. The Nemesis team surged forward, carving through stunned enemies. Frost moved like lightning. Cole's gauntlets cracked skulls. Rice's cannons blazed. But resistance grew stronger. The hallway leading to the core became a meat grinder. They reached the central chamber and stopped cold. Thousands of transparent pods lined the walls. Each pod held a human. Some screamed, some stared blankly. Some were already half gone. Tubes pulled tissue fluid and neural data into the ship's core. "This is genocide by assimilation," Wells said through comms. "They're feeding on us." Frost planted charges around the node. 10 seconds. Then a massive figure dropped from the ceiling. Larger, armored, smarter. The Harvest Commander. Rise's systems identified it instantly. Command unit. Reed opened fire, but the creature moved like thought, dodging with precision, launching a pulse that slammed Frost against the wall. She didn't get back up. Rise engaged next, unleashing everything in her arsenal. Explosions rocked the chamber. "Uploading data now," she shouted. "We need the world to see this." The alien commander charged her claws, slashing. She activated a last resort full system overload. Her body burned weapon systems, melting down into raw plasma. The blast shredded half the chamber, but she was gone. Reed moved, wounded, bleeding, but determined. He tackled the commander toward the control node. "Frost's charges?" he asked, panting. "Still active," Cole said from the other side, barely standing, one arm shattered. Reed whispered into his comm for Earth. He hit the trigger. Boom. The core erupted, ripping through the node and tearing a breach in the ship. Air whooshed out. The alien commander lunged. Reed caught it in midair. "You wanted to know what makes us dangerous," he growled. "We'll die to stop you." And together they vanished into the void. Back aboard the Retribution, Captain Hill stared at the explosion blooming in the upper atmosphere. They'd received the transmission, the footage, the truth. "Broadcast it," she said, "to every colony, every outpost, everyone." On Earth, Admiral Wilson stood before the UN Security Council. Behind him, the footage played. Pods, humans screaming. The Harvest Commander. Reed's final words. The explosion. No one spoke when it ended. Then, one by one, world leaders stood. Former enemies offered fleets. Neutral nations pledged resources. Earth stood united and ready for war. The mothership. 2 weeks had passed since the destruction of the Vega node. 2 weeks since Commander Reed vanished into the vacuum, taking the Harvest Commander with him. Across the colonies, the footage he died to send was played on every screen. Pods full of screaming civilians, biomechanical extractors, siphoning flesh, and thought the alien's final word. "You are food, you are vessels." The galaxy listened, and Earth changed. For the first time in human history, all nations aligned. Military budgets fused, scientific rivalries dissolved, resources flowed into a singular goal: war for survival. And the first step was knowledge. The Retribution sailed through deep space at max stealth, escorted by 2 newly assembled defense cruisers, all retrofitted with technology reverse-engineered from the captured scout ship and Dr. Wells' biological research. On board, the survivors of Project Nemesis were fewer but not broken. Blackwood sat on the medical bench, his chest replated with synthetic alloy. His left hand trembled uncontrollably. Cole's right leg was gone from the knee down, replaced with a crude cybernetic built in the field. And Rise was no longer human enough to measure in percentage. What remained of her conscious systems had been merged with the ship's tactical AI, her voice now echoing from the speakers in bursts of digital clarity. "Commander Rise online. Surveillance range 17 sectors." Captain Hill walked into the armory where the 2 warriors sat silent, bruise armoring up again. "Darwell's isolated another mothership," she said. "Hidden near the edge of the Perseus Rift, minimal defense network." Cole looked up. "Command node." Hill nodded, confirmed. Blackwood flexed his restructured arm, which sparked once before settling. "Then we finish what Reed started." Darwell's briefed the crew as the ship neared the mothership's coordinates. "We've confirmed this one is an extraction hub, not a processing center," he explained. "It's where the data genetic profiles psychological patterns, even language is cataloged and sent deeper into their network." Which means, Hill added, if we capture it, we get their command protocols, the entire neural map. Blackwood leaned forward. "You want to hijack their brain?" "Precisely," Wells said. It's not enough to kill them anymore. We need to understand them, predict them, break them from within. Cole smirked. Now that sounds like a proper human plan. The mothership was twice the size of the one at Vega, an obsidian juggernaut suspended in orbit above a dead moon surrounded by a lattice of biomechanical antennae. Its surface rippled like skin under stress. No escort ships, no external defense grid. That was the first red flag. They're not protecting it, Blackwood said. They're baiting us. Wells didn't flinch. Then let's take the bait, carefully. Insertion began with a new design the Ghost Pod built from stealth polymers and Harvest Tech. The Nemesis duo suited up, each carrying EMP mines, disruptor grenades, and portable data extractors. Rise's voice followed them in their comms. Telemetry live. Neural activity inside the ship is strange. It's fluctuating. How strange, Hill asked. Like it's dreaming. Cole grunted. Great, now they sleepwalk while dissecting us. The breach was surgical. Blackwood tore open a vent with his reinforced arms, and they slipped into the living corridors of the mothership. But something felt off. No resistance, no drones, just silence. Until they reached the central chamber. At the core, a pulsing orb floated surrounded by thousands of suspended brain-like nodules, each connected by sinew and electrical webbing. Wells' voice crackled through comms. That's it. That's their data hive. The Harvest don't store knowledge the way we do. They imprint it into living neural tissue grown and maintained like a nervous system. Cole was already planning data taps. Blackwood Rise's voice cut in movement. Behind you. He spun and was too late. The creature that lunged wasn't like the Harvest they'd fought. It was bigger, smoother, cleaner. It moved like it knew their thoughts. Blackwood tackled it, both of them crashing into a wall of nerve tissue tubes. Cole fired a pulse round, but the creature vanished mid-step, reappearing beside him, claws slicing across his chest plate. It's adapted, Blackwood yelled. It's predicting us. Wells' voice shouted from the bridge. It's using our own neural data from Vega, from Proxima, from every colony we lost. They're learning us, Cole gasped in real time. Blackwood roared, ripping a slab of neurofiber from the wall and slamming it into the creature's midsection, pinning it momentarily. Cole lobbed a disruptor grenade. Hissing gas erupted, temporarily stunning the alien. Finish the download, Rise urged. We're almost there. But then the creature lunged again, this time straight at the central core, trying to destroy the data itself. Cole didn't hesitate. He threw himself between the alien and the hive and detonated his entire vest. The explosion wasn't elegant. It wasn't planned. But it was enough. The creature was shredded. The hive damaged but intact. Blackwood stumbled forward, blood leaking from half a dozen wounds. The data he rasped. Secured, Rise confirmed, we have everything. Back aboard the Retribution, the team was silent as the mothership shrank behind them. Wells stood in the lab, trembling slightly as he reviewed the harvested data. This is beyond anything we hoped. We have location tags, tactical models, even psychological warfare simulations. He turned to Hill. They weren't just killing us, they were preparing to become us. Hill's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Wells tapped one of the files. Clone neural scaffolding, human cortical layouts. They weren't harvesting bodies, they were replicating cognition. Our thinking, our irrationality, our will to win. They wanted to learn how to fight like us. Blackwood, lying on the medbed, whispered through clenched teeth. Now they're gonna learn how we handle betrayal. The message went out that night, broadcast from Earth, carried on every frequency in every language. We are not prey, we are not your resources. We are the apex species of this spiral arm. You came to harvest. Now it's our turn. The retaliation begins. And across the stars, on every world still free, humanity sharpened its weapons and prepared to show the galaxy what happens when predators choose the wrong planet. No more restraint. The day the retaliation began, Earth was silent. Not out of fear, but out of focus. Every factory spun at maximum output. Every orbiting dockyard launched fresh destroyers, now retrofitted with insights from Wells's stolen data. Laboratories once competing for patents now shared breakthroughs in genetic warfare counterbiotics and quantum jamming arrays. The footage from Vega had awakened the population, but the data from the mothership, it had armed them. Admiral Wilson stood before the UED High Command in Geneva, his voice steely as he outlined the new initiative. Based on Dr. Wells's findings, the Harvest are attempting to replicate human neural architecture. That means they understand fear, ego, pride. He tapped the display behind him. It showed a star chart, a sector known as Echo Delta, where an active Harvest node was coordinating dozens of Hive fleets. We're going to give them something new to learn: desperation. He turned. Activate the strike package. Call it Operation Black Sun. The flagship UESS Revenant launched 5 days later, leading the largest combined human armada ever assembled, over 300 warships, 1,200 drones, and 6 planetary-scale carriers. And aboard its Shadow, the final Nemesis unit, Blackwood, now field commander, stood in the locker bay adjusting his pulse gauntlets. His movements were slower than before, bones groaning under the pressure of old wounds and new scars. His left eye had been replaced with a combat targeting implant. He didn't blink. He didn't need to anymore. Across from him, a new addition to the team, Lieutenant Kira Voss, Earth's first post-Nemesis hybrid, enhanced through refined procedures that avoided the original mental degradation. She was fast, quiet, and dangerously efficient. "You sure you can handle this?" she asked. Blackwood smirked. "Sweetheart, I was designed for exactly this." As the fleet closed in on Echo Delta, sensor data confirmed the worst. The Harvest had already begun converting a captured moon-base outpost Hecate into a forward hive. Tens of thousands of civilian engineers and scientists were still alive, contained, restrained, repurposed. And time was running out. The plan was brutal in its simplicity: diversion, breach, extraction, annihilation. The Revenant's heavy carriers would stage an orbital assault, drawing the Hive fleets away. Blackwood and the Nemesis unit would then drop directly into the Moon's core facility, strike the Hive cortex, destroy their neural uplink, and detonate a plasma cascade through the command spire. One shot, all or nothing. The dropship rocked violently as it pierced Hecate's upper atmosphere. Kira Voss checked her weapon, an experimental rail lance designed to disrupt exoneural clusters. "Reed would have liked this," she muttered. Blackwood didn't look at her. He would have hated that it came too late. They touched down in the underbelly of the Hive. What had once been sleek corridors of human design were now twisted with organic invasion walls covered in resinous tissue floors, pulsing underfoot like living intestines. "Air's thick with neural fog," Voss reported. "They're broadcasting commands locally. No centralized signal, it's all instinct." "Then let's cut out the brain." Blackwood motioned forward. They moved in silence. Resistance was immediate and vicious. The Harvest had evolved again. They came in new forms: spiders with translucent limbs, serpents laced with plasma tendrils, humanoid horrors that mimicked human posture, but twitched too fast, too wrong. Voss danced through the chaos, her rail lance snapping down enemies with precise surgical strikes. Blackwood tanked the hits, each impact like a train car slamming into him, but he didn't stop. He never stopped. Every drop of pain became momentum. Every scar a reason to keep pushing. They fought through 12 corridors, lost 2 support soldiers, and reached the Hive cortex, a massive crystalline brain pulsing with harvested memory. Durwell's voice came over comms. "That's the uplink. Detonate it, and we sever every node connected to this Hive cluster." "Copy," Blackwood said, planting the plasma charges. Then the temperature dropped. The walls trembled. And from the Cortex core, something stepped out. Another commander, but this one didn't speak. It screamed, high-pitched, layered like hundreds of dying minds fused into one. It charged. Blackwood met it mid-leap, slamming both fists into its thorax. Bones cracked, armor splintered, but the alien fought like an echo of everything Blackwood had ever killed. It moved like reed, it struck like coal, it evaded like frost, because it had learned from all of them. "It's copying our patterns," Voss yelled, taking cover behind a fallen beam. Good Blackwood growled, locking the alien's limbs in a grapple. "Let it learn this." He slammed his gauntlet into the detonator. The charges triggered. Boom. The cortex erupted, blinding blue light spilling through the chamber. Neural fog vanished. The alien commander froze, twitching, blind, disconnected. Then Voss fired her rail lance point blank. Its skull shattered like glass. Back on the Revenant, the uplink data confirmed what Wells had hoped. Every drone, every commander, every harvest unit linked to Echo Delta began seizing, failing, collapsing. Ships spiraled from orbit. Creatures twitched violently, then died. A chain reaction of death. The plan had worked. Operation Black Sun was a success. In the aftermath, as the Revenant returned to Earth, Wilson gave his final classified debrief to the UED Council. "We've severed a nerve," he said, "but we haven't reached the heart." Wells stepped forward next. "Based on the harvested memories, the Hive core, the original mind, is still out there. It is ancient, hidden, and angry." The chamber fell silent. Then Wilson said, "We find it, and we end this." Later that night, Blackwood sat alone in the medbay. Voss approached, setting down a sealed container next to him. "Medal of Unity," she said. "First time they've ever given it to someone not technically alive." Blackwood looked at it for a long time, then pushed it aside. "Let the politicians wear it. I've got a war to finish." She nodded once. "Then let's finish it." Transmission received. Somewhere beyond the Perseus rift, among stars unnamed and forgotten, a message echoed in the void. Encrypted in alien patterns, yet unmistakably laced with panic. A scream carried across the quantum lattice, not in sound, but in memory. The Hive mind had felt it. Pain, loss, fear. The humans had struck deep, and for the first time in eons, something in the Hive recoiled. Back on Earth, the signal was intercepted. It arrived at 0421 UED Standard Time, decrypted by Dr. Wells' newly established Department of Xenointerpretation. 1,000 quantum AIs worked in parallel to decipher it. The final translation was sent to Admiral Wilson and the United Earth Security Council under one simple heading: "Transmission received." Wilson read the message aloud to the others. "The prey has awakened. The infection spreads from within. They burn the roots. They sever the mind. Earth must be unmade before the virus becomes the fire." The room fell silent. Then Wilson stood. "Good. Let them come." In orbit above Earth, the UESS Revenant floated like a spear waiting to be hurled. Inside the hangar bay, Blackwood paced his steps, slow but deliberate. His muscles were stiff, his skin still twitching from nerve damage, but he moved like a mountain preparing to fall on someone. Voss approached, her face grim. "They've begun moving fleets," she said. "Thousands of ships. They're abandoning outer hives, consolidating for a strike." Blackwood grunted. "They're scared." They should be. Back on the surface, Earth had changed. Cities now had mobile shield domes. Civilian bunkers were reinforced with AI-guided defense cannons. Every school had emergency evacuation drills, and orbital towers glowed with launch-ready fleets. Even the civilians were different. No longer passive. Now prepared. Across media streams, the message from Reed, the one recorded before his final sacrifice, was still played like a prayer. "We're not the galaxy's victims. We're the reason it has predators." The Hive came 6 days later. A tidal wave of alien ships emerged from interstellar slipspace, over 30,000 vessels converging on Sol's system. Wilson stood at the orbital command deck, eyes burning, as he spoke into the intercom. Today we show them what Earth is. The battle lasted 38 hours. The largest human fleet in recorded history clashed with the Harvest Armada across multiple fronts: Saturn's orbital yards, Mars' defense grid, and finally Earth's atmosphere itself. Thousands died. Millions more fought. But Earth did not fall. And as the last alien ship disintegrated over the Pacific, the signal from the Hive changed. It wasn't rage. It was retreat. The core had been exposed. The Hive mind was vulnerable. And Earth knew exactly where to strike. The final mission was codenamed Operation Eclipse. A joint fleet of Earth-Luna Titan and Venusian Alliance forces, led by the Revenant, punched through the Hive's last defenses with the fury of an entire species. Blackwood led the charge. Wearing prototype armor, forged from the very alloys harvested off fallen Hive ships, his body had become something between man and myth. Voss flew at his side, moving like a shadow inside a storm of kinetic fire. Durwells, too, was there, no longer just a scientist, but a commander of intelligence units, feeding real-time countermeasures to every front. They reached the heart, and it was exactly what no one expected. The Hive mind was not a single entity. It was a vault, a library of all species consumed, a place of remembrance and erasure. Inside, the memories of extinct civilizations twisted like ghosts in digital fog. But Earth would not be recorded as extinct. No, Earth would be remembered as the one who fought back. Blackwood stepped into the final chamber, a cathedral of pulsing neural strands, with one central core pulsating at its center. It spoke, not in words, but in feelings: rage, confusion, betrayal. "You are not supposed to resist," it pulsed. Blackwood raised his fist. "We're not supposed to exist either, but here we are." He drove a disruptor spike into the core. The Hive screamed and burned. When it was over, the stars grew quiet. Ships returned home. The wounded were honored. The dead remembered. And the monsters once buried in the Arctic, they were now legends. At a global address transmitted from Geneva, Admiral Wilson stood before all of humanity. Behind him, the insignia of Project Nemesis had been updated from a sealed vault to a rising sun behind a blade. He looked straight into the camera. "To those we once called unstable, we now call irreplaceable." He turned slightly. Blackwood stood at his side. Voss, too, and Riser voice carried through the comms, now fully integrated as Earth's AI defense coordinator. Together, they had done what no one thought possible. They had turned extinction into resistance, resistance into retaliation, and retaliation into rebirth. In the years that followed, humanity did not become conquerors. They became guardians. The outer colonies no longer feared what lay beyond, because now when darkness came, it saw Earth's symbol first and remembered the pain. Final transmission from Commander Alex Reed. Recovered in debris field UESS Beacon. If you're hearing this, then we won. Not because we were stronger, not because we were smarter, but because we refused to become prey. We were made in struggle, sharpened in loss. We were the monsters they tried to lock away. And now, we're the light they'll never outrun. Project Nemesis terminated. Terran Unity Directive active. Galactic status, humanity ascended.